and welcome to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 361, and today's date is May 8th, 2014, and the title of this episode is, As All Eyes Are on Ukraine, Something Big is About to Happen in the Middle East. And we have been focused on Ukraine. We have all eyes are on it. We've been watching it. We've been seeing if Russia was going to react to what United States central bankers are doing there, and so far they have not. And what has the United States central bankers done in Ukraine? Well, they've had a Geneva peace talk where they were going to de-escalate, and as soon as it was over, they decided to start up the anti-terrorism forces and intensify what they were doing. They even tried a false flag event in Ukraine, in Odessa, killing pro-Russian people inside the building, thinking that would provoke Russia into doing something, and Russia just condemned what they did in that area. So that false flag did not work. People died for it, but they couldn't get any traction, and they couldn't get anything to happen at that point. They are continuing with the anti-terrorism forces, going after the everyday people who want to have a vote and to secede from Ukraine. And we have to remember, the FBI, CIA, United States, puppet government of Kiev are all coordinating to push the agenda there in Ukraine. We also understand that there are paid mercenaries being filtered into Ukraine with other groups like Blackwater, and we can see that they're using these forces to push these small false flag events in the country, trying to get Russia to do something at this point. While we've been watching Ukraine, things have been happening in the Middle East, but it's kind of downplayed. No one's really talking about it. You see little blurbs coming out. I mention it. And we see in Iraq, we see in Yemen, we see in Libya, the people are rising up there. Now, especially in Syria, what's been happening is weapons have been filtering in to Syria from the United States, anti-aircraft, anti-tank. They've been in the process of training many forces to go into Syria, and it looks like, as of right now, that Assad has been winning, the rebels have been retreating, and of course the government came out and they said, we're going to treat the opposition as the government of Syria at this point. And you can see from everything that's been happening, all these little things, they're not done as a coincidence. They're done on purpose as a plan. And they're building on it every single day because something really big is about to happen in this area. And we're going to get into that a little bit more later in this report. But let's get started with the economic collapse news. And Greece, we understand their unemployment is horrific. But what I find very interesting is that they're starting to manipulate the numbers just like they do in the United States. They go back, they revise it, they're saying unemployment is falling, look, it's better. And what I've been seeing here is that back in January, they told us the unemployment rate was about 26.7%. Now they went back and they revised it to 27.2%, and this month they lowered it to 26.7%. And now they're all out there going, oh my God, unemployment's getting better in Greece, it just dropped down. But they're revising the numbers. Each time they're faking it to make it look better for this for the current month, and they're continually doing this. Unemployment is absolutely terrible. They can say it's 26.7 or 27.2. It is getting closer and closer to 30%. The youth unemployment is around 56.8%. This is what they're reporting, and this is completely awful. This is not getting better, and they can move their percentages between 1.1 to 1.2 up or down. It makes no difference at this point. Yeah, people are unemployed. It's going to get worse. They have no way of getting out of this. They are too much into debt. People have no jobs. How are they going to spur job growth? They can't do it, and this is their problem, and this is why they're playing with the numbers like this now, because this is all they got. They have nothing else, just like the United States. Now, here in the United States, they're saying that the initial claims have dropped, and at this point, does anyone really believe them anymore about the unemployment numbers and how many people are actually claiming unemployment? Because we have to remember the long-term unemployment was completely cut off. All those people fell off and they're not counted anymore. And what we're seeing right now is each month they tell us it's, there's less people applying for unemployment, there's more people, and then they manipulate the numbers any way they want, and they bring the unemployment numbers down. So it really, at this point, makes no difference whatsoever. But what we are actually seeing is they're getting to the point where all their numbers are starting really not to make sense anymore. Because every time they tell us something and they tell us the story about how unemployment is going lower, things just don't make sense in each one of the states. And it's getting worse and worse as time goes on here. And what this says is the highest insured unemployment rates in the week ending April 19th were in Alaska, New Jersey, Connecticut, Puerto Rico, California, Illinois, Pennsylvania, Nevada, Maine, and Michigan. And what are we seeing? Well, we are seeing layoffs, and I said there's going to be a lot more layoffs coming, and here we go. Barclays, their total layoffs is going to be about 19,000 people over this year, 2015 and 2016. So they're in a constant layoff pattern, and we're going to see this from every single financial institution. More and more are going to come out, and they're going to tell you that we need to lay off these people. And this was 2,000 more than they originally gave their estimates for. So it is not getting better, it is actually getting worse. And it's going to be very, very difficult for people to find work, especially in this field, because we're seeing Bank of America, Wells Fargo, UBS, RBS, all laying off people, and these people work in the same industry. I've worked in the industry, and I know the people in the industry, and we normally went from financial institution to financial institution because that's where our expertise was. And these people are going to have a very difficult time finding work, because when they go to RBS, they're going to say, I'm sorry, hiring is at a freeze, we're laying off. Oh, all right, let me go to Wells Fargo, let me go to Bank of America, and they're going to go to each one of these places, and most of them most likely are in a hiring freeze because they're in a layoff pattern right now, and they are not going to get work. Now, the Fed is out there telling us, that the economy is recovering. Yes, it's a little sluggish because of that darn cold, snowy weather that we had in the winter, and we know that's completely fake, phony, and false. And the Fed in Boston is laying off 160 people. Now, these are the people telling us that everything is getting better, we're in a recovery, and the unemployment is continually coming down. But they, the central bankers, are laying off people, because here in the United States, the economy is a complete illusion. It is completely not real, and it's very, very tough for the youth of America, those especially coming out of college who paid a lot of money to go to college or took out huge amounts of student loans to go to school, to come out of school and get a job, and those jobs just don't exist. Right now, 80% of all graduating seniors have zilch in the way of jobs lined up for their post-campus lives. This poll was conducted by After College. 17% of the students have managed to land any kind of real job. 73% of the college seniors surveyed said they would very much like to have a job. Well, of course they would. They have a huge amount of student loans. They're coming out of school, and there's just nothing out there whatsoever. Among seniors who are about to get degrees in engineering, math, and technology, 81.6% are still seeking jobs. Among business majors, just over 85% are still furiously and fruitlessly sending out resumes. Well, business majors are going to have a very difficult time. A lot of the financial institutions are laying off, and they're going to find that you can continually send out these resumes, but there's going to be really no answer at this time. And you have to remember, on the unemployment numbers, these people aren't really counted yet because they've never had a job. Even though they're coming out of school and they're looking for a job, they're not counted whatsoever as unemployed because they never had a job. But they went to college, they have student loans, they're looking for a job, and this is the next generation moving in, and it's going to get worse, because what happens next year and the year after that, when there are just no jobs? Everything starts piling up. The youth unemployment is going to skyrocket. It is not getting better, it is getting worse. Now, today, Janet Yellen was being interviewed by the Senate, having a hearing, and Senator Sessions went on to say that the stimulus in Washington has at least so far been better for the investor class and the political class. It has not been good for the working class. Not only has this stimulus failed American workers, but it has left us with record debt and an economy dependent on unprecedented policies that cannot continue. And Bernie Sanders, during the same time frame, asked Janet Yellen a question. And Sanders went on to say that the central point that emerges from our research is that economic elites and organized groups representing business interests have substantial independent impacts on U.S. government policy, while mass-based interest groups and average citizens have little or no independent influence. That sounds like an oligarchy to me. Sanders asked Janet Yellen, is the United States an oligarchy right now? And of course, she didn't answer yes. She skirted around the issue, and she actually went on to say that there's no question that we have had a trend towards inequality of income, but she never answered the question yes or no. And this is the way most of these people do it. They give a long-winded answer. They never really answer it. It's absolutely meaningless because we all know the answer. But a Princeton Northwestern study that looked at the whole United States, and they concluded that the United States is now an oligarchy. America is no longer a democracy, never mind the democratic republic envisioned by founding fathers. Rather, it has taken a turn down elitist lane and become a country led by small dominant class comprised of powerful members who exert total control over the general population. An oligarchy, said a new study jointly conducted by Princeton and Northwestern University. One of the findings in the study, the U.S. government now represents the rich and the powerful and not the average citizen. Now, this is completely noticeable by every single person who's really looking. And we are looking. The rest of the country, not so much. When you really look at it, it is a few who are making all the decisions. They are above the law. They don't abide by the law, and they see the American people as a lower class, as the serf. So we can see what is happening. We can see how they distinguish us separate and apart from them. The laws that they're creating and placing only apply to the lower class people, not to them. Just like Obamacare doesn't apply to them, And we can see that this is continually going on and on and on, and it's going to get worse and worse as time goes on. And this is why they created their own personal military police force to protect them, and that is called DHS. They are dormant right now. They are in a sleeping state until they are activated. Once they are activated, they will protect that body of people from the American people. And we can see how this is all being done. They're infiltrating all the local law enforcement. They are purchasing millions and millions of rounds of ammunition. They are giving grants and money to all the local authorities as long as they're in compliance. And everyone just goes about their business until they're actually called upon. Now, as we know, Janet Yellen was out there saying that she's seeing housing is not doing as well as they thought it was going to do, and the big investment companies, hedge funds, were starting to sell off their homes. Well, they must have gotten instructions because they see that this is not working out too well, because the American people, the tapped out American people that have no credit, no home, no full-time job, lost 38% of their wealth. They can't understand why they're not coming and buying these houses. So to help these people out, let's lower the down payment. That should make it better. And they lowered it to 5, then to 3, and I see some places 0. That didn't work. Let's give it to the subprime people. That's not working. Let's give adjustable rate mortgages again. That's not working. So guess what? These huge hedge funds and investment companies, they need to start purchasing housing houses again to continually keep the market pumped up. So they must have got their marching orders from the Fed, because the percentage of all cash buyers has soared in the past year. 42.7% of all U.S. residential property sales in the first quarter were all cash purchases, up from 37.8% in the previous quarter and up from 19.1% in the first quarter of 2013, to the highest level since RealtyTrack began tracking all cash purchases. Median home house prices decreased by 8% from a year ago in March, following 14 of 16 months where median home prices increased annually. The cash buyers today mean that all is not well in the housing market, said Clifford Rossi, finance professor at the University of Maryland. First-time home buyers should make up around 40%, and we're not seeing it. We're not seeing it because U.S. consumers are unable to chase home prices into the stratosphere and instead have opted to rent. The U.S. home buyers cannot afford it because their credit has been ruined. Their wealth has been decimated. They do not have full-time jobs. They only have part-time jobs or no jobs whatsoever. They have no money in the savings at this time. They are tapped out, and we are not seeing the United States people, the people of the United States, actually purchase this home, and this is going to really bring down the real estate market. And again, these hedge fund and investment companies are continually pumping up the market to make everyone believe that everything is fine. And what we're seeing is prices are starting to come down because, they can't keep up with the amount of houses that they have to purchase at this time. It's getting rougher and tougher because people are getting out of houses saying, let me take my profits now. I'm not buying another house. I'm going to rent for a while. And it's getting harder and harder for them to continually to keep up these purchases in cash. Now, we understand that Obamacare is a complete cash grab. It was designed not to give health benefits to every single person to make them better off in health-wise. We understand that taxes are intertwined into Obamacare. There are penalties if you don't take it, and they are looking to make billions upon $billion worth of revenue. They were looking to prop up the insurance industry and give them huge amounts of profits. This is not working out. They're not seeing it work out whatsoever. The executives of the health insurance are worried about the costs that are continually rising because there are taxes intertwined into the health benefits, and they're saying that they're going to have to pass this all down to the policyholder and increase the taxes. They're going to have to increase the premiums because they're going to have to include these taxes, and they're unsure of what the cost will be next year because there's no way to gauge anything. And right now, you can just see what is happening. Most of the people are opting out of Obamacare. They're not paying. They're getting their bills. They're saying, oh, this is way too much. I didn't know it was going to be this much. And they're saying, you know what, I'm just not going to pay for it. And if something happens, I will sign up because they'll take anyone at that point. And I'll pay if I have to go into the hospital. Otherwise, I don't see a benefit to myself. I have to pay everything out of pocket anyhow, so what's the point of it? And this is the way people are actually looking at it right now, and they're not seeing the tax revenue. The insurance companies are not seeing the revenues they thought they were going to receive, but don't worry, there is a bailout clause in Obamacare where the taxpayers will make up the difference if the insurance companies do not make the money that they thought they were going to make. Okay, now, the United States central bankers have been demonizing North Korea, and they're continually doing this over and over and over. Most of the time it's when they're making deals with Russia or they're making deals with Iran, bypassing the dollar. And now what they're doing is they're saying that, they need to bring in 20 Marine brigades into the North Korean area. the U.S. has established an operational plan to deploy about 20 Marine brigades to the Korean Peninsula in case of a North Korean invasion into the south. And each brigade is made up of around 1,500 to 4,000 soldiers. That is a lot of soldiers. They've been using this propaganda over and over and over to make everyone believe and to demonize North Korea to bring these troops in. Now, this is all in preparation for World War III. Because what are we seeing around the world? Well, we see the pivot to Asia. We see the military assets being moved in there. The United States just made a deal with the Philippines. They're going to be using 5 of their bases. They're having drills out there. They're moving a base in Japan to a different location to bring in sophisticated weapons. They set up a missile base in Guam. We have 60% of our fleet in the Pacific. We also see that they're setting up a missile shield in Eastern Europe pointing towards Russia. Right now, NATO, the United States, are bringing in military assets, troops, all to that region to surround Russia at this point. So all this is in preparation for war. Now, in Ukraine, Ukraine has deployed about 15,000 strong military force near Russia's border. The 15,000 strong grouping of Ukrainian forces has been deployed in the border areas. Military conscription has resumed, he said. At the same time, NATO amasses its grouping of forces in Eastern Europe. So we can see what's happening. They're continuing with the anti-terrorism forces. NATO is building up their troops. They've been moving their troops, Ukrainian troops, forward, closer to Russia. They are pushing, controlling, trying to provoke Russia as best they can, and this is what they're doing at this time. Now, Putin has asked the people of Donetsk to postpone the referendum. Hey, listen, take a breather. Let's regroup. Let's look at this. Now, the people of Donetsk said absolutely not. We're not going to postpone. We're going to have this on May 11th. And this just goes to show you, and it was a strategic move by Putin to show the world that he does not control these people, that it's not Russia that's in there, it's the actual people. And we actually had the New York Times reporters go to these areas to find the Russian agents that are causing all this, and they reported that they could not find these people. We also had an NBC crew drive up and down the 1,200-mile border of Ukraine and Russia to find the mass buildup of hundreds of thousands of troops, and they couldn't find any. Yes, Russia had a drill on the border of Russia and Ukraine, but again, many countries have drills. Putin has backed off and moved the troops back. And of course, NATO is saying that's absolutely ridiculous. He didn't do this. But we have to remember the United States, France, Germany flew over Russia just a couple days ago, and they could have seen and they could have looked, and they most likely saw absolutely nothing at this point. Now, Russia is holding military drills to repel nuclear strike. President Putin has overseen military drills on countering nuclear strikes. The planned drills came ahead of the May 9th celebration dedicated to victory in World War II, and Putin went on to say that we are carrying out tests of the readiness of the Russian armed forces. It was announced last November. The exercises will involve all branches of the armed forces across the country, Putin told reporters of the defense ministry. At the same time, there was a Russian ship near the UK, and Britain had deployed a destroyer to shadow the ship and to see what it was up to. And the training exercises are due to include ground troops, artillery, as well as the Air Force. They were held during a summit of heads of state of security bloc made up of former Soviet states. Now, Russia is out there saying that Kiev's reaction has jeopardized the OSCE's efforts to start an inclusive national dialogue in Ukraine, the Russian foreign minister said in a statement. It looks like Kiev, they forgot that the situation in Ukraine is in the focus of all responsible international partners. Obviously, Yatsenyuk and his team should first of all talk to Ukrainian people, not from above, but as equals without annoying ultimatums and illegals' use of force. And of course, we understand that the United States central bankers They are not going to talk to these people. They are the people of Ukraine. They want freedom, they want democracy, and they realize if they did actually talk to them, this would pose a problem. It's easier not to talk to them and just use force and try to provoke Russia and try to get their way with starting a war. Because if they actually had a dialogue, they would have different bodies from all over the world joining in and working out this entire situation. And it might be worked out where they decide not to be a part of Ukraine at this time, and they are not going to let this happen. They will use force, they don't know peace, and they will continually crack down on the people, or they like to call them terrorists. And we can see this is how they react. They talk a lot, and I'm talking about Ukraine, United States government, central bankers. They give a lot of lip service, but when it comes to the actions, it always goes to show you that they will do really bad things to the people there. They have no problem killing them. This is why they brought in the paid mercenaries. This is why the Ukraine military has been sent to different locations, not to this one. And you can see that they created lists. They were handing it out, trying to find out who those people were that are a threat to the government, and they were going after those people. So you can see how this is all being orchestrated to continually provoke Russia. And they will not stop. They will never stop. They will never admit they're wrong. They will continually do this, and this is not just happening in Ukraine. This is happening all over the world at this point. Now, NATO is going to help secure strategic infrastructure in Ukraine. You have to remember, Ukraine is not part of NATO. So what business is NATO, what business does NATO have in Ukraine at this point? But NATO experts have visited Ukraine in order to advise the government on improving the safety of nuclear power plants, gas pipelines, and other critical infrastructure amid growing violence and fears of conflict with Russia. Now, I'm going to tell you right now, they're not there for that. They are there, along with the FBI, the CIA, to continually and strategize against what is happening there. They're forming new plans. They're bringing in more military assets. They're bringing in more paid mercenaries. This is why NATO is getting involved at this point. A NATO official confirmed that a small team of civilian experts from the alliance visited Kiev last month to advise the Ukrainian authorities on their national civil contingency plans and safety measures in the context of possible threats to critical energy infrastructures. Now, I don't know where they think all these threats are coming from, because the people in Donetsk and the southeastern section, they just want to secede and have a referendum and not be a part of this puppet government. The puppet government controls the West at this point, and we can see that they are using a lot of propaganda to make everyone believe that Russia or some other force is going to come in and disrupt what is going on there. And even with the gas pipes and all that, nobody has to disrupt it. They're not paying their bills. So Russia is just going to cut them off eventually. Now, Russia is out there, and they're saying that they're going to be forced to respond to the sanctions. Russia says we'll respond to broader U.S.-Canada sanctions. Russia says forced to respond to unfriendly actions. Russia says sanctions, not our method. So what is their method? Well, we kind of know what it is. It's called the destruction of the dollar. They realize that they are the creditor. China is the creditor. The United States is the debtor. So they have all the cards in their hands. They have the ability to bring down the dollar when they want to. They have the treasury bonds. They can dump them. They're making deals with all other nations to bypass the dollar. They're creating their own payment system. So their other methods are destroying the dollar in another way. I mean, the dollar is going to destroy itself, but if they really wanted to, they could push it forward with ease at this point. Now, out in Yemen, the U.S. Embassy is going to be shut down due to terror threat. Now, we've seen this before. Every time the United States comes out and tells us that they're going to have to close an embassy because of terrorist threats, we know they are planning something. This happened back in August of 2013 when everything went on high alert and they closed all the embassies. This happened in South Sudan where they said we need to, get the people out of there and close the embassy, and all of a sudden they started to invade South Sudan. We're going to see it in Nigeria, where all of a sudden they're going to say we're going to be closing embassies, we're going to be evacuating people, and we're going to put travel advisories. This is what they are doing at this point. In Yemen, the U.S. State Department has announced the temporary shutdown of a public services at the U.S. Embassy in Yemen, citing recent attacks against Western interests. Due to recent attacks against Western interests in Yemen, we have temporarily suspended operations of our embassy to the public. Now, we know this is a complete fabrication, because what is happening in Yemen is that the people right now are rising up, and the United States central bankers are getting ready to do something in this area. Even a political analyst says that the temporary shutdown of the U.S. Embassy in Yemen is a fabricated event aimed at resurrecting al-Qaeda. They're going to tell everyone that al-Qaeda terrorists are back, and they're back big time. And they are really wreaking havoc on the country in Yemen. But these are the people who want the private Western Central Bank out of there. They want the puppet regime out of there, and they want their countries back. So we're going to see drones over Yemen firing at a lot of people, and this is why they're pretty much shutting down the embassy at this time. Now, this is not the only area we're seeing this. In Libya, the Libyan rebels, despite an agreement, are refusing to withdraw from the oil terminals. They're not giving those up because they know that this is what the central bankers want. And Libya, the people of Libya have been fighting and pushing the government out. The government is really barely functioning at this time. That's why they called for international help. The United States said you have 2 months. So we're looking at an event here that's going to occur very soon, because they're going to bring in international forces. They're closing the embassy in Yemen, and this is starting to look very bad. In Iraq, the same exact thing is happening. They're bringing in more and more forces. They're bringing in Apache helicopters. They are trying to push back the people of Iraq. And right now, what's happening in Syria, and you have to remember, all of this is happening at the same time. In Syria right now, you have to understand that the rebels have been losing. Assad has been pushing them out. We have an election coming up June 3rd. And what we are seeing is that they've been building up forces in Jordan and Qatar. We know that weapons are being shipped there, anti-tank, aircraft, all being shipped there. They haven't really been using them, but they're being prepped and readied. We have to understand they closed all the Syrian embassies in the United States and ordered the government officials out of the United States. Then they brought in the opposition. The opposition is here, and they're saying, this is the new government of Syria. We don't recognize Assad's government. We recognize this one. And they placed many sanctions on Syria, and they're upping the sanctions right now. They are sanctioning individuals in Syria. 2 Syrian refining businesses and people were now placed on the U.S. sanction list. So they're sanctioning. They're building up the troops. They have the weapons coming in. They've already said that the opposition is the newly formed government of Syria. They recognize it now, because what is happening is they are building and building this up. So what is happening in the Middle East? Complete havoc is going to go is going to happen in this region. I mean, it is going to get really out of control coming in a very short period of time at this time. And we can see that Syria right now only has about 8% of their chemical weapons that they need to remove. Everything else was removed. And guess what? They can't remove them. How interesting. We also have to keep in mind of the chemical and biological weapons that they're trying to convince everyone of, that Assad has been hiding from the UN Security Council, and he's been hiding it in the Alawite section of Syria. We also have to remember that they've been using the propaganda that Assad has done something like 60 chemical attacks with the UN Security Council there in the country removing the chemical weapons, which makes no sense whatsoever, and I discussed this many times. What's happening right now, the head of the mission charged with destroying Syria chemical weapons says the last 16 containers of chemical agents awaiting transport out of the country are in a contested area near Damascus that is currently inaccessible. UN Security Council on Thursday that it's not possible to arrange a ceasefire so authorities can get to the site where 5 containers of the most dangerous chemicals and 11 containers of less toxic chemicals are stockpiled. So we have containers there, 5 of them, of the most deadly chemicals that they can't get to. This is a setup. They are planning to do something at this time. There is no doubt about it whatsoever, because all of these indicators are showing us that something big is going to happen. And we know that they're getting ready to do it because they've been prepping every single time, bringing it slowly at a time, bringing the weapons in, training the people, the sanctions, telling Libya that we'll be bringing in international forces. Yemen, the embassies have closed. The embassies in Syria, in the United States, the Syrian embassies closed. We can see how they're forming and what they are doing here. They're getting ready. Now, the White House is on lockdown now for the second time in 3 days. And we have to remember, the Pentagon police, they're blind to whatever is going on in that area. Their whole computer system was taken down. Nothing's working. They're completely blind now. Now the White House has been locked down for the second time. For the second time in 3 days, the White House has been locked down because of a security breach. The Secret Service says 2 people threw something over the fence surrounding the White House complex. 1 person from the south side and 1 from the north. So something is about to occur. They are building and building and building on all this propaganda. They're trying to make us believe that Al-Qaeda is growing. Al-Qaeda is in the country. Syria is the launch pad. We see cyber attacks happening all over the place. We see the kill switches for the New York Stock Exchange, for the NASDAQ, and for the BAT system all in place. The bail-in documents are all in place, and they're building and building upon all of this, because we need to understand that the economic collapse is coming. This whole entire system cannot be sustained, and they know this. They're doing everything they possibly can to prop this up for a little bit longer with all these laws of going across to other people's bank accounts in other countries, taxing those people in other countries if they work in another country but they have a U.S. passport. They are trying to get as much as they possibly can before the end game. We can see this. They're trying to remove the rights of the people. And one last thing I'd like to mention is that come this May 16th is the American Spring. They're going to march on Washington. It's going to be peaceful, no weapons, nothing like that whatsoever. And what I can see that might occur, there might be agent provocateurs within the crowd, and they might try to start something, depending on how many people are there and how big it is. If this turns out to be a huge, huge march and hundreds of thousands of people turn out and the media is really covering it, we can see then that something will occur, because they will make sure that it gets televised. The government will make sure that everyone sees the people doing something, even though it is an agent provocateur within the crowd actually doing it. And this will allow the government to come down on the people there, and they will be able to declare martial law. But again, this march is completely peaceful. They're saying absolutely no weapons, and they want everyone to abide by the laws inside of Washington, and they're going to march on Washington. And if you want to see more of this, you can look at the x22report.com site. I have it listed there, right on the side where it says potential false flags. Just go to the bottom, and you'll see, and you can click on the link, and you can get more information. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.